I'm going to give it a second. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Eye on ESI. It is our monthly webinar where we discuss all things job trends happening in ediscovery. I am Maribel Rivera, Vice President of Strategy and Client Engagement. I oversee the community on a global scale. I'm joined today by our ACEDS President, Mike Quartararo, and Jared Coseglia, CEO and founder of True Staffing. And our special guest this month, as you can see, we've been having them every month, is Jim Sullivan, who is over at ediscovery AI. Jim, can you tell us a little bit before we jump into the weeds? Wait, just tell us a little bit about ediscovery AI. Tell us a little bit about you as well.
Yeah, I've been in the e-discovery industry now for about 15 years. Started off doing predictive coding consulting, and now we build solutions using AI. So, basically just trying to build solutions to solve the problems we've had for the last decade, but using AI to do it faster, better, cheaper than before.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And before we get started, before Jared drives us into some of the first stats that we have, I just want to share, this is an open forum. Share your questions. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your feedback. This is, throw it all in the Q&A or throw it all in the chat. We want to hear from you. It's not about us being just talking heads. But Jared, let's get started.
Yeah, rock and roll. Jim is a super smart guy. I'm really excited that he's joining us today because I know he's going to inject with really thoughtful questions. And I've had the pleasure of spending some time with him over the last really year and getting to know him and his company and the brand. I think they're doing some really cool and interesting things. So welcome, Jim, to our monthly sojourn. Here's where our data is coming from. So if you wonder where we're getting all these statistics, here's where it's coming from. And you can download most of this data if you want to look at it raw from our website, trustaffingpartners.com. So what are we going to talk about this month? Let's look at some of, of course, we always highlight our hot jobs. There are a lot of hot jobs in ediscovery right now. I will say that there is a lot of full-time hiring, and we're going to get into those metrics in detail today, but it's a good spectrum of hiring across the board from, as you can see, some director level hiring, mid-level hiring, review manager hiring, technology hiring, lawyer hiring. It's a pretty mixed bag. So if you're considering a career move, now is still a very good time to be considering the job market. Despite whatever may be happening at a macro level, we're still seeing pretty steady demand as we have since the beginning of the year in ediscovery. So
what excites me here is it's hybrid, remote. So that's always good to see.
Well, contract jobs are generally remote. So that's going to be part of that symbiosis between contract staffing, contract lifestyle work, and being fully remote. Now, fully remote work is not driving the job market the way it used to. There is certainly a demand for more people to come into the office, and with law firms hiring a good corpus of the marketplace still right now relative to vendors and corporations, we're going to see a continuous return to office, no doubt about it.
Awesome.
I was going to ask you about that, Jared. Is that? I mean, you see the law firms doing it, but are remote jobs coming back to the office in other segments, corporate, government, vendor?
I mean, unless you're a contractor, almost all the corporate jobs that we see, regardless of industry vertical, are going to have some kind of in-office requirement. Generally, the accepted norm is a 3-day, sometimes it's 2, but generally the accepted on both sides, candidate and customer, hiring manager, employer, is 3 days, generally speaking.
Yeah,
and people seem pretty willing.
I think we've said in the past it's going to settle on hybrid, right?
It has settled on hybrid. If you are looking for someone to come into the office 4 to 5 days a week, you've probably got less than 5% of the job-seeking marketplace interested in your opportunity. And you're probably going to have to pay a premium for that individual.
Good to know. Good to know.
Or you're going to have to lower your expectations in terms of talent. So let's jump right in. Money remains the #1 motivator for job seekers right now, but culture and ethics are starting to enter into the top 5. And culture, I think we all have different opinions about what it means, and we don't have to get into that right now. But ethics is interesting, and specifically the ethics around what's happening with the federal government and its relationship with external law firms and corporations, and that is starting to have an impact on people's job search interest. And candidates are being very deliberate in who they are and aren't willing to look at for those reasons. And it's creating some challenges in the job market, certainly. ESI hiring right now, I got to say, this is the biggest trend for me. There is a significantly low utilization relative to the last 5 years of e-discovery contractors. And it's unusual. It's unusual. We're just not seeing as much demand as we typically do, considering how busy it is for contractors. We're seeing a lot of full-time jobs, and a lot of these full-time jobs are open for a really long time now. So part of that is the amount of private equity that's in the vendor space and the heavy measurement of dollars and cents and a lot of responsibilities being put on existing employees, regardless of whether or not they're able to augment in full-time contract or any other capacity. That's why burnout was the #1 motivator for job seekers for almost a year and a half. The reason it's not the #1 motivator now is because we're of the mind, and we're hearing it from candidates, that they've sort of given up on the idea they're going to find a quality of life position in the e-discovery industry, at least for right now, and they want to get paid for their time. So it's been a shift to money over burnout and that driving the marketplace, and sort of, hey, yeah, I'm not really worried about that. Like, just find me a place that'll pay me better than where I'm at for the amount of time I'm working. Okay. We've got speed of hire slowed in April. Part of that is because the lack of exploration of contractors as aggressively as the market had in the first quarter and in years past. So FTE takes longer. Contract life cycle is usually about a week or less from the time we send a resume to the time somebody accepts a position. We can keep going, MT. First offer acceptance likelihood at an all-time high. Now, this is a really interesting one, because usually when the first offer acceptance likelihood is an all-time high, it's because the market is in a bit of a drought of opportunities. So people are taking the first offer they receive. And we'll unpack this metric, specifically in some data. But right now, that's not the case. There isn't a drought of opportunity. People are getting 1, 2, and even 3 offers, but they're still leaning towards that first one. And this kind of goes back to that first bullet point of culture and ethics entering the top 5. And I think mixed in with that sentiment is this feeling from job seekers that they want to feel wanted. And the customers that are being deliberate and intentional, that's the word I was looking for, intentional with their offers, are winning the affections of job seekers. Even as they consider other opportunities, they're still leaning towards that first offer. So being first right now really matters. And it's been pretty astonishing. We had a couple of candidates who got multiple offers. One of them got 4 offers. They still went with that first offer. And a lot of that decision-making had to center around, I just feel like they really want me. I'm going to really matter going there. And they made that clear from the beginning, and they were very deliberate with their offer. And they, often aren't negotiating a lot, right? They're coming out of the gate with a very strong offer with which everyone then has to now compete with. For what it's worth, that's what we're seeing. Industry-wide salary growth has remained flat in April, but is still consistent with what we've seen all year long, which is about a 10 to 20% increase for job seekers at the point of hire. I will say this, and this is maybe a good transition into things on Jim's mind. If you've got rel air skills right now, that's where the premium is coming in compensation. And there is a relationship between the volume of jobs, what those jobs pay at volume, and new jobs that are emerging in the marketplace, specifically around document review, at a higher level where there's a premium as much as there's a elimination of volume of jobs. There's now an accelerated premium for skill sets for highly experienced people in wielding the AI technology, specifically Relativity Air, as employers are going to the market looking for elevated talent as they diminish the rank and file first pass review volume of hiring that they are traditionally accustomed to. And this isn't the entire marketplace. There are certain people that are holding on to that billable hour and individual billing as long as they probably will hold on as long as possible. But we are starting to see trending for unique accelerations in earning potential for rel air skill sets.
Jared, how much of an impact have you seen AI make on the hiring process, the strategy around what people are looking for, what the market's demanding? Has that really started yet? Is it taken off already? Where are we in that phase?
Well, I think the key word in the question you asked me is strategy. And I would say from a strategic perspective, it is happening. It has been happening. And now people are actually executing on a lot of that strategy with more intentionalism, right? Now, has it perforated? Are we seeing the result of it? Are we seeing mass elimination of first pass doc reviewers? I'm not entirely sure that that has happened. But if you're asking me, are strategic leaders at the top at least experimenting, if not executing, if not completely reconfiguring game plan for future earnings by integrating AI technology earlier into the process? Yes to all of that. It just depends on the organization where they're at in their maturity model of moving in this direction.
Right. And we've been working with some companies that have been going for, man, 6-12 months now, where they've started this process of how are we going to use AI? How are we going to implement it in our doc review space? Working towards prototypes, POCs, walking through a process, really developing things, and really only recently started actually putting it, into place in live matters where it actually would have a real impact. Up to this point, it has been something that has largely, not affected the, the live projects as much as the roadmap. And now I think we've started to see, specifically the last 5 months, really impacting live matters, live projects that would have had large review teams now scaling back, using AI more, using humans less.
Well, we have to assume that the indicator of that is the deceleration of not only engaging contract resources, but even exploring them, right? So MT, could we go to the contract versus FTE data? This is sort of indicative of the point you're making. Look, these last 3 months, we've seen more proportional direct hiring month over month in ediscovery than in any 3 consecutive months since 2023. And if I go back further, I bet it's even further than that, right? We're at nearly a 85% ratio of jobs that are FTE versus contract. That has to be partially because of this, because document reviewers are generally on contract. And they are starting to hire less of them. And yes, this is part of what's indicative of that, but it's not just that, right? It's bigger than that. I think a lot of people, whether it's REL Air or eDiscovery AI or some combination of that, and God knows what else they might have in their hodgepodge of tools that they're licensing and exploring and playing with, they're looking for people who can come in and wield them, help them filter which ones are really right for their business, that they can use at scale potentially, and then actually do projects using that weaponry, right? And I said this in an intro to our Hot Jobs newsletter, which comes out every week. I always write a little bit of an intro, and I gave this guidance to a lot of professionals because I think people think of it the other way around, and it just doesn't work this way in legal. Law firms and vendors go and license technology, and then they figure out how to staff it. It's not the other way around, guys. They're not going to go say, oh, well, we need to have a certain amount of people that can do this, and then we'll start, buying stuff. No, they're going to go buy stuff, and then they're going to say, who do you have that knows how to use eDiscovery AI or REL Air or Harvey or whatever it is? That's the new tool that they've integrated into their ecosystem. That's how it's always been in eDiscovery. I mean, I remember the days where I'd get concordant summation, robocopy skill set requests, right? So this is no different. It's just a different set of tools and a different set of skills. And the good news, Jim, is for every 3-5 first pass document reviewers whose jobs are probably going to be eliminated, somebody who was making 100 to 1.25 is probably going to start earning 175 to 200 in base compensation or in hourly earnings, because they are going to wield technology in a way that helps with the elimination of those first pass document reviewers. And we're seeing it, right? I'm not saying anything, that we don't all know and we haven't all seen in sci-fi and haven't always thought would be the case. But yeah, we're headed there.
Hey, Jared, what are the roles that you're seeing? I'm putting aside doc review, right? Because I just think that's a beast unto itself. What do these roles look like? What do these AI-driven roles look like? I've never seen a job for a prompt engineer. I don't know where that was or where that's come from.
No, because anyone doing anything is going to have to know how to do some prompt engineering at a certain point, right, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what that job is, it's going to be, let's walk through the process from start to finish, where we have a set of documents that we need to review. So we need to figure out what issues we're looking for. Now we need to put together that review protocol for AI, basically prompt engineering, run it, and then evaluate the results and actually validate to show that it's accurate, calculating recall and precision based on a random sample. So it's going to be a combination of the legal skills is what are you looking for in the case? What things are we trying to identify? And then the technical skills of understanding AI to generate prompts to find those documents and then validate the actual result, calculating recall precision metrics on that basis. So it's a combination of some tech skills, some legal skills. But you don't want to have 5 different people that go through that process. You want to have a person that understands the entire thing and so they can really fully understand what's going on, what they're trying to get to, what the end goal is, as well as the legal ramifications of what they're doing. So, it's kind of like a person who can do a review using the technology we have instead of a manual doc by doc, human review.
Well, I would also say this because I think that's a bucket of jobs, and you're 100% right, Jim, and that's exactly right. I agree with everything you said. But Mike, to answer your question specifically, you said other jobs, and my answer is this: the jobs look just like the work looks, 100% bespoke. Every job is different. Every job description we get for a legal AI specialist has some bent towards it because there's some partner at a law firm who has figured out how to integrate some technology that is now ready for productization, and they're going to bring in talent to help productize whatever that process is, probably for that partner or for that practice group or for that knowledge management leader who's found a way in to say, hey, look, we can do this times 100 now. Here's our proof of concept, right? I think a lot of people, as Jim said earlier, have been going through POC, whether it's for an e-discovery workflow like the one he just described, or something that's completely unrelated discovery, but in the service of legal work in order to reduce costs and create efficiency and either increase your margins or pass that cost back onto your customers so you don't lose them and they don't go somewhere else, right? All that's happening right now. There's not a single job that looks the same. And someone who's right for a legal AI specialist today at one law firm or one vendor will not be right for a job that pays the same and is titled the same and has a completely different set of expectations. That's
you're using that phrase legal AI specialist, but isn't this just a project manager with AI skills? And I say that deliberately. I'm trying to help our audience.
One thing I think I've been really impressed by is the people that have been leaders in this industry, that are talking at conferences, they're explaining about this. If you ask them how they got to where they are, what they did to learn, almost all of them will tell you they just started using AI tools in their day-to-day life. They just started using ChatGPT to write drafts of papers for them, format emails, just using it as a day-to-day, understanding how it works. This is not like I need to go to trade school for 5 years and try to figure it out. I mean, maybe someday in the future it will be, but at this point, this is a skill set that you can get pretty simply by just doing some things yourself.
Right, but Jim, that's really important, man. Like, this is a really important point you're making, and I think you're an exemplar of this, which is leaders in the industry have to get their hands dirty, and the ones that are succeeding did that. They did not say that should be a project manager task. They did not say I am above that. They have their hands on the keyboard. They are getting their hands dirty, right? People that led e-discovery practice groups that were, at multi-billion-dollar organizations, right, are in the weeds using the tech that they're either developing or licensing or using open source, and they are not above it. So I don't want to say it's just a project manager with AI skill sets because as Jim just said, there is a vast corpus of people in this space that haven't done the basic work of figuring out, like, some of us have, of like, well, why don't I ever need Final Draft again? I want to write a screenplay. I'm going to have ChatGPT do it for me and format the whole thing. I'm not going to buy software to do that. It's too slow. I'm having a conversation with my robot all day long, and they're writing it for me and then formatting it for me, right? So imagine now applying that to all of your work processes. A lot of people haven't even made that bridge, right? So start somewhere in your personal life so you at least have a narrative when talking to an employer of like, what if we did this, right? Leaders want ideas, man. This idea that all great leaders have to have the idea already, be the one to have the idea, disseminate it, execute on it, is a little nuts, right? Manage up to your leaders, have ideas, they're going to be open to them, and the good leaders are getting their hands dirty in the tech and able to work in the trenches with their project managers or their review attorneys and elevate them from what is the norm now to what will become the norm in a very short period of time. And just to add one more layer to this, most of these jobs are attorney jobs right now because people want the defensibility of saying an attorney structured this workflow and these prompts, and that is not only defensible for these reasons, but it also costs you this, right? It's not a project manager doing it. It is a lawyer doing it. And that's a very different set of bill rate relative one to the other, just to give it a little bit more complexity.
Yeah. And I think the subject matter expertise comes into play, and there's some other things. I don't think I've heard a lot of project managers say, hey, I'm doing all of this with AI. I've heard other people, like to Jared's point, attorneys say, this is what we're doing. Like we had Rose Jones here, right? This is what Rose's team is doing. They're all attorneys.
Definitely.
They're not just project managers.
Yes.
And there's others in other organizations doing the same. So
but it's different
right
applications, right? Like, we're used to negotiating TAR protocol and ESI protocol. And now, as Jim sort of alluded, there's AI protocol, right? That sort of doesn't have a case law to back up the best practices and approaches. So we're the pioneers, right? Rose Jones is a pioneer. And so be pioneers, guys. Be pioneers.
So we have a question.
If you want to move up. If you want to move up.
We have one question in the chat so far. Do you think there will be more contract hires later in the summer if the tariffs come back in unison, since that will cripple many corporate clients' budgets and adjust their litigation and merger strategies? And I know last month or the month before, we talked about M&A being down because of a lot of different things. So what's your thought on that, Jared?
Here's what's going to happen, guys. Everyone's running very lean right now because it's a very unpredictable macro economy. So everyone's continued to run lean in lieu of what we thought would happen before all this tariff stuff, which was accelerated growth and accelerated spend in order to increase that accelerated growth. What we've seen is a lot of uncertainty and careful, measured approaches to hiring, both in terms of volume and what companies are willing to pay. We haven't really seen, as Mike said a few months ago, and it really stayed with me when Mike said this, we haven't really seen the actual e-discovery happen yet for a lot of the litigation that we know has been filed, that we know is underway, that we know is leading to discovery. That's going to hit in the third and the fourth quarter. So is a very aggressive deregulation agenda. Hopefully we're through tariffs, although we're not really through tariffs, guys. We're just on a 90-day pause with China. So it's not over yet. So don't assume that we couldn't see a Wall Street, like we did in the first quarter, sometime in the third or the fourth quarter of this year. It's entirely possible. So because we can't rule out anything, that uncertainty is giving everybody hiring trepidation. When work starts to balloon for organizations, whether they're law firms, vendors, or corporations, they're going to turn to contract resources, or they're going to start paying more money for full-time hires in order to get jobs filled that have stayed open, that can no longer wait to be filled. We're at a levee that has been waiting to break for 2 years, and we are continuing to pour water in there, waiting for it to break. It is a matter of time, not if, but when. And yes, there are going to be significantly more contract jobs coming. I just don't want you to think they're going to necessarily be first pass review.
Jim or Mike, any thoughts on that?
I mean, that's 100% agree. One thing that we've talked a lot about is, is AI going to replace first pass review? Are we going to see a big change there? And I mean, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and it started out with a lot of people saying, I just don't know what I think. I'm not sure. And I'll tell you, it's probably been 6 months since I've even heard someone suggest that they wouldn't be doing their entire first pass review with AI in the future. A lot of, not many people are there yet, but everyone is either talking about their plan to get there, starting the testing to get there, but there's not many people I'm hearing anymore. And maybe I'm hearing, the people I talk to might not be a full representative sample of the entire industry, but definitely am seeing that sentiment is now much more universally accepted as this is the way it's going to be. There's simply no reason why we would choose an option that's not faster, better, or cheaper. I mean,
to that point, we have a question.
Yes, there is. Oh, yes, there is.
Well, listen, you're assuming it's all three of those things, that it's faster, better, and cheaper, and it's not always all three of those things in concert together, right? It might be
you only get two.
Better, but it might not be cheaper depending on the nature of who's running the project and how it's being organized.
I mean, if you can get a first pass review for less than 30 cents a doc, I mean, you're gonna be good luck, but.
Right, but everyone's not as good as you, Jim. They're still figuring it out. A lot of people haven't figured it out, and a lot of people don't have access to the tools or the talent that are sitting on this call, much less sitting in the houses and walls of, most of the MLaw 100. That's, a corpus of the marketplace, but it's not everyone. And in a lot of ways, AI is, as I would imagine you would agree, this great equalizer, right? It's an opportunity for boutique firms, for mid-sized firms to compete with large firms that can't scale in the same way with review in the past, and now maybe they can in technology.
And
but
even
also,
some, I'd say, so much same for vendors, where now you have a vendor who could not have supported a massive project before with hundreds of doc reviewers that can now step in and have even expertise with a few people that can now compete with the big players in the space.
So
that software comes with a cost.
I have a question there. Personally, as we see more people on the information governance side starting to implement AI, Gen AI tools and other AI tools, do we see that also affecting that first pass review and the whole e-discovery process as well? Jim?
Are you talking like a data breach?
Yeah, or like, let's
Like
say, some of the organizations that are out there like S2 Data and ActiveNav, who are cleaning the data, finding all of the data ahead of time, tagging all of the data way before it even gets into litigation.
Right. Yeah, and that identification of PII and identification and extraction is actually one of the biggest pieces of what our business has done in the last 3 months for sure, if not 6. Where we've seen a higher demand for that piece on specifically data breaches, data breach response. But just, identifying, extracting, normalizing the data has been a significant part of what we've done. Probably even at this phase, greater piece of what our work is than first level responsiveness review.
Interesting. Okay, so cleaning the data.
And I'll just add that for many years, information governance has been the problem, right? Knowing what information you have, where it is, how to get to it, like that's the foundation of e-discovery. If you can do that part better, all that downstream stuff is going to be easier to manage.
Right.
And that's
that
the
piece,
key
I
to the
think,
whole thing.
That's the piece I think that is not appreciated as much, because first pass contract review is a thing that's already been I don't want to say it's already been won. AI is better than humans, it's faster, it's cheaper, but that's not where we're stopping. That's not where the things are going. We're going earlier on up the chain. Our Legal Week release was really, an early case assessment tool that allows you to now take a data set that you've never seen before, run it through a AI tool that can now give us insights into everything we have. All of the, understanding our data better, flagging PII, identifying important parties in the documents, identifying key docs, identifying issues, all those things now that we would not have gotten until way further on down the path, moving up the chain. So now we're getting that, 1 day into the review instead of months in. And we're just seeing more and more moving in that direction where first pass review is becoming less and less important piece of everything, because we'll have insights into everything before it even gets to that phase.
Yeah. Awesome. So we have a question, Jared. I'm sorry, before we get to motivations, aside from RelAir, and I think you'll love this question, Jared, what other tools or platforms are you noticing as commonly requested skill sets, as job descriptions are rarely exactly the same?
Well, certainly e-discovery AI. And, I would say when we start looking at the scope of AI legal technologies, it is such a broad ecosystem. It really depends on what that bespoke desire and use case is. I would say Harvey has a nice piece of market share. We're seeing a lot of demand for Harvey. We're seeing a lot of demand for Vincent. Even just basic Copilot, where people who understand agentic GPT management, right? We're getting to a place now where people have built enough bots that they want someone who knows how to oversee them and manage them appropriately and audit them and maturate them for different segments of the business. But when it comes to e-discovery, most people are in bed with Relativity and RelAir, and so that's what's going to command a premium in compensation. Now, you may not have any experience with AI, and that may be needed to even get your foot in the door on some of these jobs. So it's really relative. I mean, here we've got a list. I know we're about to hit time of what the hottest skill set demands are, right? And you can see here RelAir and then other Gen AI solutions. And I think it's, there's a lot of them out there.
Question for you on top of this then is, and Jim or Mike, what you're hearing, as far as soft skills. Now we always talk about these skills, right? But what about the soft skills that people are looking for as well?
I just think in general, we're seeing an increasing lack of interest in hiring talent that can't communicate what they do effectively, whether it's to a lawyer or to somebody else. I mean, the days are sort of done of, hey, you can go isolate yourself in a corner and code or process data and not be able to communicate what you do effectively. Like those people aren't really able to break in or sustain for very long in the industry without, you know, getting frustrated or phasing out. You got to be able to talk to people about this. And that is increasingly becoming the demand of customers, more consultative, more ability, not just to consult, but to get buy-in, to get adoption, right? You got to be a salesperson in e-discovery with this stuff.
Communication is 80% of it, 85% of it.
Jim, any
Yeah, no,
thoughts?
I completely agree. I think it's changing too, because when I first started, I was, my wife always said that my job was a nerd translator. My job is to take the technical side of things and to relate to the lawyers and, kind of make sure that the people who, because I had a good understanding of both, and then that piece just had so much value. And I think we're shifting more towards people being expected to be doing both those roles, where they can explain things, be an attorney, explain things, explain the law, explain how this affects the case, expand what their case strategy is, but also understand the technical pieces of it and explain that in a clear format, rather than having, like you said, in the past, most of those, technical jobs were something that, you could kind of lock yourself, in a room and you could just go to work and not have to really talk to people. That's definitely the biggest differentiator between the good and the great people.
So we're over time, but if our speakers and our attendees all are in for another 5 minutes, so Jared can get through a couple more slides, please let me know.
We don't even have to go over the slides. If people have more questions, we're happy to go through them. All this data can be found on the website, and everyone will get an email directly from me afterwards with a link to all that data and all these
awesome. And we've got some thumbs up, so I think we can go through some other things. I don't see any other questions currently, but if you do have questions, please throw them in.
I'll just close, Maribel, on a point that you guys were making before that I think is an important one for people who are job seekers to understand about how the ecosystem works.
Yep.
Corporations are moving their e-discovery professionals further left into the governance side of things. But understand, it really is InfoGov. It's not AI Gov, right? The AI Gov piece is generally owned by privacy and security and speaks more to how that organization uses or doesn't use AI throughout its entire technology infrastructure and process infrastructure, as well as what they're concerned about from a regulatory perspective as it relates to the use of data for AI, et cetera, which is why privacy generally owns AI governance. But the InfoGov piece, the internal data, where it is, a lot of that data mapping, a lot of that litigation preparedness and litigation readiness is really being leaned into with corporate e-discovery stakeholders. So you're going to see them doing more of their job over the next few years, leaning in that direction. You're also going to see vendors, and you see this with the very large ones, investing and having their most significant growth area in the business in information governance consulting, because they've realized they may have hit the volume capacity of what they can actually get from their customer base in terms of downstream e-discovery revenue, and they know they need to move upstream. I mean, we've been saying this for 10 years, but now they're really doing it, right? And they're building multi-million, like tens and 20s and $100 million practices of former e-discovery people who generally had some corporate experience and moved into information governance and are now feeding all the downstream discovery as a result of the work, consultation, and savings that they're providing them on the e-discovery consulting piece. So, and I'll wrap it up here. If you're an e-discovery vendor and you're not involved in the information governance consulting, you will eventually get beat. Someone's going to get upstream of you. Everyone should be baking information governance consulting into their e-discovery roadmap for growth, because it's going to become increasingly harder to continue to get new business on downstream e-discovery. It is a very saturated marketplace. And the big players who have the most money to spend have figured out over the last few years they need to swim upstream. And now they're not only doing it to affect the downstream revenue for e-discovery, but they're banking a lot on that consulting group, a lot.
I've seen 100% that. And the other thing is this, that what we're doing is we're learning more about our data further upstream. So those questions about the data are no longer present further down. So, I would go as far as saying that e-discovery as we know it is the days are numbered. I mean, 5 to 10 years here, we're already going to know which documents we need to produce. We're already going to be able to identify which documents are important to the case. We're not going to do this whole thing where we collect and process and analyze and assess. it's going to be analyzed, you know, at the source. We're already going to know which documents we have, which documents we need. We have a tool now that's as good as a person looking through every single document and determining what's important. And that tool is only going to get faster, cheaper, and better. And we're going to be at a point where, you know, we're going to have litigation and you're going to say, give me all the documents about this case, click a button, and we're going to have them. There's not going to be, you know, we're not going to need to learn about the data after collection because we're going to know about it already. And that's what we're seeing people change. And I think that that's where this industry is going to go in a way that is going to have a major impact on a number of people.
But in some ways, isn't that beautiful, Jim? Because then it really puts the human capital emphasis on accountability and on storytelling. And at the end of the day, what is lawyering? Right?
It's not going to be a tool that you use as a weapon to force someone into settlement based on how much it's going to cost for discovery. And you know, I would say it's going to be it's going to know what's going on before you do. There's not going to be a situation where there's somebody's doing something in your company that's putting your company at risk that you don't know about. You're not going to have a situation where there's someone who's, you know, that's, you know, a victim harassment or other things that you don't know about, because AI is going to be able to analyze every single communication through your organization and identify those risks in real time instead of trying to find out down the road through a discovery process that costs a fortune.
So, all right. Any last, so anything else we want to add, Jared?
No, thanks for joining us, everybody. I hope this was insightful. I know we got on a real conversation spiral, but I love that. Fantastic.
We love when we spiral out. Jim, any last minute thoughts or comments?
I mean, I'm just excited. I think it's, you know, this whole thing's been incredibly fun since we started. I think we're just starting to take off now. This whole industry is going to be moving, and I think that if anything, it'll be a fun ride. And there's a lot of opportunities, you know, as Jared mentioned with a lot of these jobs, a lot of opportunities for people who are new to the industry that haven't really, you know, been well established, that can now jump out and learn new skills and really be leaders in this space, where I just don't think that type of opportunity has existed in the legal industry for a long time.
I love that fact. Mike, any last minute thoughts?
No, just thank you everyone for joining us, and note the promotional items that Maribel put in the chat.
It is our 15th anniversary, and we're very excited to be here for the past 15 years and have true staffing alongside us for so many years of that. So thank you all for joining us. Jared, Mike, and I will be back next month with another guest, so don't miss that. And as Jared mentioned, he'll be sending out an email in the next couple of days. Look for that with follow-up from this call. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Okay.